11. I'm 83. Everyone said my first week of marriage was normal. They were lying. The wash basin is cold against my palms, and the crack in the enamel looks like a gray river running toward the drain. Behind me, the bedroom door gives its thin, mouse-like squeal. I freeze. My husband says my name softly. Sarah? I can't turn around. The floorboards are warm from the July heat, but my feet feel like blocks of ice, and the rough hem of my nightdress scratches behind my knees. There's a dark bruise on my wrist where I held myself too tightly. No, wait, it isn't my wrist. It's my upper arm. I still mix that up. Downstairs, the clock strikes 5, one dull knock at a time. Soon his mother will come with bread. Soon someone will ask whether I'm settling in. Soon I will smile, because every woman I ask says the same thing. The first week is hard. Esther says it while folding a towel into perfect thirds. Ruth says it without looking up from the beans she's snapping. Mama presses her lips together and tells me to pray for a willing heart. But nobody tells me why my body pulls away before he reaches for me. Nobody tells me why he looks frightened too. Nobody tells me why the sheet is hidden before breakfast, or why the women check my face instead of asking what happened. Tell me in the comments, what were you taught to call normal? And if you want to go further, a super chat or membership says these voices are worth hearing. Now, back to what happened. What happened didn't begin in that bedroom. It began years before, in small lessons nobody called lessons. In our church district, a good wife was meant to be yielded, and a good husband was meant to lead. Those words came from sermons about order, from men sitting on one side of the meeting house and women settling babies on the other, and from the belief that peace came when everyone stayed in place. Nobody sat me down and said, Sarah, your body won't belong fully to you once you marry. I just knew. I knew from the way Aunt Miriam stopped talking when Uncle Amos entered the kitchen with the blue fly ribbon above the table. I knew because a bride's questions were treated like smoke near hay, something to stamp out fast. Here's the part that still catches in my throat. I was taught more about keeping sourdough alive through winter than about what might happen to my own body after the wedding. The rule lived in glances more than words. A girl who laughed too loudly around boys got one look from her mother, and that was enough. A wife who seemed tired on washing day got another kind of look, softer but sharper, as if tiredness were a confession. When I was 14, I heard Cousin Lena ask why a woman had to obey when her husband was wrong. The room went still except for a spoon tapping a crock. Her mother didn't scold her. She folded the dishcloth twice and said, "We don't borrow trouble." Lena never asked again. Neither did I. But I remember her tucking her right thumb into her fist until the nail went white, and something in me almost rose up. Almost. Then Mama sent me to carry jars to the cellar, and I went. You learn where the walls are by seeing who bruises against them. By the time Eli asked to court me, I knew silence was safer than being thought difficult. Esther tried to prepare me 3 weeks before the wedding. She pulled me behind the wash house, where the ground smelled of wet ash and lye soap, and said 12 words. I counted them later, because I had so little else to hold. Be patient, don't shame him, and pray until it feels natural. 12 words. That was all. Ruth gave me a jar of salve wrapped in brown paper, but she wouldn't meet my eyes. Mama packed 2 white nightdresses, both sewn high at the neck, and tucked dried lavender between them, as if a good smell could stand in for knowledge. Eli knew no more than I did. Boys were warned against lust, but warning isn't teaching. Fear isn't teaching either. He was 24. No, 23. I always make him older in my mind, because he looked so serious in his black Sunday coat. We walked toward that week carrying rules, shame, and almost no plain truth. I had known Eli since childhood, though we barely spoke until the winter I turned 19. He fixed the runner on Papa's sleigh after it split near the creek and stayed until dark, working by lantern light while snow gathered on his shoulders like flour. What I loved was how gentle he was with things that couldn't speak. He set injured birds in a wooden box by the stove. He watered the old mare before himself. Once, when my glove tore during a buggy ride, he gave me his and drove home with one bare hand red from cold. That mattered to me. It still does. He wasn't cruel. I need you to hear that. He tugged the seam of his left sleeve whenever he was unsure, and during our courting visits, that seam nearly came loose. I think our wedding was Thursday. No, Friday, because the bread for Sunday was cooling when Esther pinned my cap. Even then, I trusted his kindness more than I feared the silence around us. The days before the wedding were full of work and almost nothing to say. Women came with pie plates, quilts, jars of peaches, and advice about keeping a fire low at night. Mrs. Yoder told me to soak beans before sunrise. Aunt Miriam showed me how to stretch one chicken across 2 suppers. Not one woman used the word pain. Not one explained that fear can make the body close like a fist, or that 2 people can stop and begin another day. On Thursday evening, Ruth brushed my hair 100 strokes because her mother had done it for her. At stroke 63, she opened her mouth, then closed it. I saw her throat move. "What?" I asked. She said there was a knot near my neck. There wasn't. That's the thing nobody tells you. Silence has hands. It pins your cap, folds your dress, smooths your hair, and sends you smiling toward a door you don't know how to open. On our wedding night, Eli lifted the latch, and the room held its breath. The room was smaller than I remembered from the afternoon, when cousins carried in our chest. Now the air is hot and still. One oil lamp burns on the washstand, turning the white wall the color of weak tea. The bedstead is walnut, with a carved leaf on the headboard and a shallow nick where someone struck it years before. Outside, crickets pulse in the weeds, and every few minutes the old mare stamps against the stable boards. I'm wearing the nightdress with 6 pearl buttons, though one is cloudy and doesn't match. The sheet feels rough because Esther washed it without enough soft soap. Eli stands near the door in his undershirt, folding and unfolding his suspenders. He looks at the floor, then at me, then at the lamp. His hair is damp at the temples, and a drop runs behind his ear. He looks less like a husband than a boy handed a tool without being told what it does. He asks, "Are you all right?" And I say yes, because that's the word I've been trained to give. My mouth is dry. I press my tongue behind my teeth and taste the mint leaf I chewed after supper. Eli sits on the bed, leaving a wide space between us, and the mattress rope gives one low groan. His hands rest on his knees. Mine twist the cloth over my lap. "They said we should," he begins, but the rest doesn't come. I nod anyway. The lamp flame jumps when a moth strikes the glass, and both of us look toward it as though it might speak. He reaches for my hand, then stops halfway. "Sarah?" I hear him breathing through his nose too fast. I want to comfort him. I want someone to comfort me. Both things sit inside my chest at once, heavy and hot, while the clock downstairs marks each second we don't know how to use. His hand moves. I stop breathing. He touches my shoulder first, careful as if I'm one of the injured birds he kept by the stove. "Tell me if," he says, and goes quiet, because neither of us knows the end of that sentence. I whisper, "I'm trying." That is what I think a wife should say. When my body pulls back, he freezes, but only for a moment. We have both been taught that fear is something to pass through, not something to hear. He asks, "Is this how?" I say I don't know. My jaw locks so hard it aches near my ear, and my fingers grip the sheet until the weave leaves squares in my skin. There is pressure, then sharp pain, and I flinch. Plainly, My body isn't ready, and neither of us understands that this matters. I want to pull away and move closer at the same time, because I love him. I think I love him, and I'm frightened of what my fear says about me. He stops when he sees my face. For one breath, I think the room might open and let us out. Then he says, "We're married," not like a threat, but like a rule he's trying to remember. I nod because the same rule is inside me. We try again. I stare at the carved leaf above his shoulder and count its points. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. My heels press into the mattress. The lamp smells of hot metal and kerosene, and sweat gathers under the ribbon at my neck. "I'm sorry," he whispers. "No, I'm sorry," I answer. That was our language then. Two people apologizing while neither understood what should stop. When it's over, he lies beside me without touching me. The crickets keep going. I turn toward the wall and find a loose blue thread in the quilt, the only blue thread in a field of brown. I pull it free, then wind it around my finger while he says my name once and I pretend to sleep. In the morning, I walk carefully because every step burns, and I tell myself, this is what becoming a wife feels like. Eli carries water from the pump and won't look at me. His mother arrives before 7 with a loaf wrapped in a red striped towel. She studies my face for half a second, then smiles and says, "You'll settle." That is the whole conversation. Neither of us understands that pain is information, that the body can say no even when the mouth has been trained to say yes, or that closeness without safety can feel like harm when none is meant. We had been given one path and told it was duty. There was no word for pause. There was no map for tenderness beyond kindness in daylight. The fact that still makes my hands cold is this. Every married woman who spoke to me knew enough to warn me it would hurt, and not one told me we were allowed to stop. Eli wasn't trying to hurt me. That's what makes it worse. For years, I thought the missing piece was courage. I thought I needed to pray harder, relax more, be less childish, become the wife whose body followed instructions without protest. I didn't know there were names for what fear does to muscles, breath, and trust. I didn't know willingness had to be present each time, not granted once at the church bench when vows were spoken. We had no plain lessons about anatomy, no language for boundaries, and no picture of closeness as something built together instead of endured by one person and guessed at by the other. The silence wasn't one woman forgetting to tell me. It passed from mother to daughter like a recipe with the most important line torn away. Years later, outside the community, I learned one sentence that would have changed that room. Pain means stop, not continue. Simple as that. But on that first morning, with the red striped bread towel on my table, all I knew was that another night would come. And it did. Night after night came with the same small sounds. Eli washing at the basin, the click of the lamp chimney, the bed rope pulling tight beneath us. I learned to leave my body before anything began. I would count the square nails in the ceiling beam, then name the jars in Mama's cellar from left to right. Beans, peaches, beets, apple butter. By the time I reached 36 jars, I could make myself feel far away. In daylight, I became useful. I baked, mended, birthed children, and kept my hands moving so nobody would notice they shook after dark. I also learned to place the baby's cradle close to my side of the bed, because a crying child could interrupt what I couldn't. That sounds cruel to say. It wasn't the baby's job to save me, but you learn. I thought I was the only wife doing sums on a ceiling to survive tenderness. Turns out that was the community's best-selling lie. Eli sensed something was wrong, though neither of us could name it. Some evenings he stayed in the barn long after the cows were milked, rubbing the brass buckle with an oily rag until it shone. Other nights he asked whether I was tired, and I always said no, because I heard the question as a test instead of an opening. Once, after our second child was born, he touched my hand and said, "I don't want you afraid of me." I remember the chipped rim of his coffee cup and the crescent of dirt beneath his thumbnail. I wanted to tell him then. I did. But telling him would have meant admitting our marriage held something we had no right to question. So I squeezed his fingers and said I wasn't afraid. His face softened. Mine did too. We both accepted the lie, because it was kinder than the truth we didn't know how to hold. On washing days, the women stood over the kettles with steam wetting our caps and lye biting the cracks in our fingers. Ruth once reached for a sheet, saw a faint rust-colored mark, and let it fall back into the basket. "You too?" she asked. 2 words. I looked at Esther, who was rubbing soap into a collar until the cloth nearly tore. She didn't look up, but her shoulders stopped moving. I almost told them everything then. My mouth opened, the kettle lid rattled, and Aunt Miriam came through the gate carrying clothespins in a blue tin. So I said, "It's nothing." Ruth nodded too quickly. That was when I knew. Not from a confession, not from some brave speech, but from the way 3 women stared at one wet sheet, and all chose the same lie. We had each built a private room inside ourselves, and somehow we recognized the doors. Esther's story came years later, in pieces, while we shelled peas behind her barn. She told me her husband used to pray aloud afterward, asking God to forgive his lack of patience, while she lay with both hands flat beneath her back so he wouldn't see them tremble. He was ashamed, she said. So was I. Then she laughed once, without humor, and dropped a worm-eaten pod into the good bowl. Her mother had warned her that refusing a husband could harden his heart. When Esther tried to ask the bishop whether fear mattered, he told her marriage required sacrifice and sent her home with a verse copied on cream paper. No one threatened her. No one had to. Doubt was treated like a loose horse. Surround it, calm it, lead it back to the same stall. 4 months later, Esther stopped speaking about it. By our 3rd year of marriage, I had learned that a woman could tell the truth and still be trained to take it back. Decades pass before I see the sentence. I'm 71, sitting in a clinic waiting room outside Lancaster, with a plastic fern beside my chair and a fish tank humming against the wall. Eli has been gone 6 years by then. A pamphlet lies upside down beneath a magazine, and when I turn it over, there is a drawing of 2 circles. One says freely chosen. The other says can be withdrawn. Between them is one word, consent. I know that word now, of course, but I hadn't known it then. I read the line beneath it. Agreement must be present, clear, and ongoing. My body jerks as if the chair has tipped. The paper shakes against my wedding ring, which I wear on my right hand. And then sorry, give me a second. The fish tank bubbles. A child coughs near the door. Nobody else knows the room has just split open. I'm not angry at first. I'm sad. So deeply sad that my teeth begin to chatter, though the room is warm. I think of the girl in the pearl-button nightdress, staring at 5 carved leaves while she tries to be good. I think of Eli folding his suspenders because he is scared too, with no words except duty and no map except silence. We were both prisoners, but our cells weren't the same. His ignorance let him move forward. Mine taught me to disappear. That's the thing nobody tells you. 2 people can both be failed by the same system, and one can still carry more of the harm. I sit there grieving for her, for Sarah at 18, 19, 20, because she thought pain was proof she needed to become smaller. I want to reach through all those years and put a blanket around her shoulders. I want to say, your body isn't disobedient. It's speaking. Later, I try to explain it to a woman from the clinic. She is kind, with purple glasses and a silver bird pinned to her sweater. But she says, "Why didn't you just tell him no?" Just. That tiny word lands harder than she means it to. I tell her there was no just where I came from. There was the church bench, the wedding vow, Mama's pressed mouth, Esther's 12 words, the red-striped towel, and every woman who had learned to call endurance peace. She nods, but I can see she doesn't quite understand how a person can be kept from a word without anyone locking it in a box. I don't blame her. Still, I leave the clinic feeling homeless in two directions. The world I came from gave me no language. The world outside had language but no picture of the walls, and I carried that. I won't lie and say everything there was dark. I still miss horses breathing clouds into winter dawn, their leather harnesses creaking while the sky turned pale over the fields. I miss bread from a wood stove, the crust splitting with a soft crack beneath Mama's knife, and the heel passed to me while it was too hot to hold. And I miss my grandmother's hands when she prayed. Wide knuckles, one crooked finger, flour caught beside her ring, as if every person at the table had been gathered inside those hands. Those things were real gifts. Work taught me steadiness. Neighbors taught me to show up before being asked. The seasons taught me that nothing living can be rushed without cost. I am homesick for a place that hurt me. I don't know how to make that sentence less strange, and I've stopped trying. But the harm was real too. Silence dressed up as holiness. Beauty and harm can live in the same house, sit at the same table, and bow their heads over the same soup. I don't have to burn every memory to tell the truth about the ones that burned me. These days, I teach my granddaughters the names of their bones, their feelings, and their right to stop any touch that makes them afraid. I still quilt with Ruth twice a month. She brings molasses cookies in a dented green tin, and sometimes we speak about those years, sometimes we don't. I even feel tenderness for the women who failed us, because most of them were handing down the only map they had. Tenderness isn't pardon. It's simply the truth that they were lost too. I'm choosing a different road, though I still hear the old one behind me. If you grew up somewhere your own body was kept from you like something dangerous, I see you. If you were taught obedience before you were taught choice, I see you. You may still love the people who failed you, and that doesn't make the harm less real. You may miss songs, food, prayers, fields, faces, and still know you couldn't stay. You survived something. Surviving is enough. You aren't broken because your body remembers what your mouth wasn't allowed to say. You aren't cruel for naming it now, and you don't owe anyone a neat ending, a clean forgiveness, or a version of your story that makes them comfortable. The truth can arrive late and still belong to you. Mine arrived in a clinic beside a plastic fern, 52 years after I needed it. Late isn't never. I mean that. To the one still inside, your questions don't make you bad. To the one who left, missing home doesn't mean you chose wrong. To the one thinking about leaving, you're allowed to move slowly and seek safe people. To the one who is married and only now understanding why her body goes still, your body has been trying to protect you, not betray you. To the one who recognized herself 3 minutes ago, breathe, put both feet on the floor, and let this truth come at the speed you can bear. I can't tell you what choice to make. I can tell you that knowledge is not rebellion, and a boundary is not cruelty. Wherever you are in this, I see you. And you are not alone. There is no prize for understanding all of this in a single day. Leave me a comment. Tell me what you felt listening to this. Or tell me the sentence you wish someone had given you before you needed it. There is so much more I haven't said yet. I'm just getting started. There are stories I haven't been brave enough to tell, but I'm getting closer, and Rebecca Amish Home is where I'm laying them down one at a time, without turning people into monsters or silence into virtue. Subscribe if you want to stay for the next one. And to the members and Super Chat family, you're the reason the next story gets told. If you want to be part of that, the door is always open. I'm 83 now, and I can't give that young girl her first week back, but I can give her the words she was denied. I can say them plainly. I can say them where other women might hear. And maybe one of them will stop counting ceiling nails and understand that her fear is not failure. Your body was always yours.